It's time to learn about the variables, but before we get into it, I would like to show you something because I just opened our project and I can see that our camera is more like squarish or 4 by 3 ratio, but as I remember we set it to be 16 to 9. So I think this is some kind of a bug in Unity, and to get it solved you have to do a very easy step. Just click on the game tab, and as you can see this is an 16 to 9 ratio. So if we switch back to scene, it's all fixed. So this is something to keep in mind, that when you open the project you can see this camera to be a bit different, but this is very easy to fix. So let's get into the variables. Let's open our script. And what is the variable? The variable is kind of a container that will hold some values. We have a lot of different values we can hold in our variables, like the string value. So there will be all the texts that we want to display on our game, or there might be some text like an address that we want to keep in our program, so that whenever some button is clicked it will direct us to some website or something like that. We'll have some file names which will be as string names as well. Let's go further, like different values, like integers, so numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 100. It will be a different value, different type of variable. We can have a decimal numbers like 0.25 or 1.5. There will be a different type which is called float, or double, which is a double precision float type. And we have a lot more. For example, if we create some object in our game, it will be a game object. So if we want to reference this object, we'll create a variable of type game object. When I click on the main camera, you can see there are some components in the inspector window. So every component, like the reference to this component, can be held in the variable, and this variable will be of type of this component. So for example, we can create a variable of type camera, or the variable of type transform, and so on. But it might be hard to understand it if we don't make an example. So let's do an example, and let's create a variable of type float. So I'll just clear this out, and it depends how your variable is going to be used. If you want to get access to your variable from every method that is available in your script, you should declare it here outside these methods. So I will do it and give a type first. So this is going to be a variable of type float. So I type float, and then we have to give it a name, and let's call it a speed. Let's say we want to define some speed for our player that we are going to make very soon. So we have this float, and name of it is speed. Now we can assign some value to it. We will be assigning a value in different places, like for example, we can define it at the very beginning of our script, or we might have some method or function that will change this value later on. But at the moment, we might assign this value at the very beginning, so at the time when the game starts. So let's use our start method to do it. So once the variable is created, defined as you may call it, you can use it by referencing its name. So now we are just using speed because this is the name of this variable, and assign a value of, let's say, 1.2 to it. And as I told you before, the equal sign doesn't mean that this is equal to something which at some point might look like, but this means that the value that I'm going to write now, which is 1.2f, because this is a float variable, so this value is going to be assigned to this variable. This value is going to be assigned to the speed variable. So this operator is assignment operator, okay? And it will be always like that. So everything that is on the right side is going to be assigned to something that is on the left side, okay? Just to keep in mind. And later on, maybe we want to display this variable in the console. So just remember that the code is being executed from the top to the bottom. So here we declared it, here we assign this value to it, and now we want to print it. So let's print it and call it by the name. And as you can see, auto suggestion is working very nice. So just save it. Don't forget about saving your scripts. Go back to Unity, wait for a second so that it's compiled, and go to the console, and here you can see that we've got 1.2 in our console. Of course, we can modify this value, we can change it. So let's try to do it. Here we printed it, and after it, let's say we want to increase it. So let's increase it. So just reference it by its name and assign a new value to it, and let's say it will be 2.4f. Don't forget about an f. This is not always like that. Not all variables will need to add some letters to the value we try to assign to it, but the float is one of those variables that we have to keep that in mind. So we changed our value in this variable. That's why it's called variable, because its values changes, so it varies. And now we want to print it once more. So let's type print and speed again, like so. Save it, go back to Unity and press play. Now we can see that there is the first value printed, we changed our variable and then printed the other value that we assigned to it. So you should know how to read the code, and remember that you read it from the top to the bottom. So here we are defining our variable, then the start method is executed, and inside of this method we assign the value to this variable, we print it, we assign a new value, and we print it. In case that we want to assign some value at the very beginning, we might assign it straight away. Like we can just add an equal sign in here and assign some value like 0.2f to it, and it's going to work totally fine. We have this 0.2 value assigned to this variable at the very beginning, then it's being changed to 1.2, and then it's changed to 2.4. So if we define our variable and assign some value to it straight away, it's called an initialization. You don't really have to remember it at that point. You will get familiar with all those words at some point. The points to remember from this lesson is that if you want this variable to be visible in others' methods, you have to define it at the top of your class, outside of the method, because of course you can define some other variable within the method. Like let's define a new float value called maybe move x. So this will be responsible for moving our player horizontally, and let's assign some value to it, like maybe 2.3f. So now if we want to call this variable from, for example, update method, we can't really do it because this has a local scope, so it can't be visible outside of this method. If we create a variable within some method, it stays within that method and can't be accessed from outside of it. So just keep that in mind. This is better to do it this way, because once the method is executed, this is get rid of the memory and doesn't provide some performance drop, but you can't really do it all the time. And to be honest, working with Unity will do quite a lot of variables that are declared at the top of our class, like so. The variable topic is quite large, so I don't want to keep you in one lesson, and we will just spread it on many lessons. So I see you in the next one.